The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Coming up tonight on Perspectives, the New York City Police Department had 209 domestic violence incidents in 2009, and if that's not alarming enough, the Bronx had the second highest number of domestic incident reports among the boroughs of New York City. Coming up tonight on Perspectives, we take an in-depth look at what exactly is domestic violence and how you might be able to look at some warning signs. That's coming up tonight on Perspectives with yours truly, Darren Ivey.
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life. What's your perspective?
Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective?
Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I'm Darren Jaime. We welcome you to the show. As always, you can catch more information about Perspectives, as we say, on the BronxNet, www.bronxnet.org. That's our website. Also, you can check us out on YouTube, some past episodes on YouTube. All you got to do is go to BronxNet Perspectives, check out the YouTube page. You'll be able to see some of the past highlights of the show. And, of course, you can always check us out on Facebook and find out more information about the show as well. We encourage you to share your comments and your perspectives because it truly makes a difference in the life of our show as we are celebrating 10 years just here on Perspectives Television. So we want to let you know that tonight we are focusing on a very serious issue, talking about domestic violence, and we're talking with a very special guest. Our guest tonight, she began her career as a corporate lawyer where she worked on projects in the area of immigrant rights, as well as developing expertise in the laws of political asylum, as well as immigration remedies for victims of domestic violence. She is Raquel Abrahami, and she's with us here on Perspectives, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
When we talk about domestic violence, I want to be clear, and once again, I want to do also for our viewers, let me just go back and say what we said at the onset of the show. At the onset of the show, we gave you some numbers. Let's give you the right numbers because we said them a little off. Over 250,000 incidents of domestic violence the New York City Police Department responded to. 68,000 of those 250,000 occurred right here in the borough of the Bronx. And so we want to have a conversation about domestic violence, finding out what exactly is it, how you might be able to notice some signs. And Raquel, thank you again. And so when we look at domestic violence, we want to talk about this for a second because it's very important to know what exactly is it.
Well, domestic violence is a pattern of behavior that the abuser carries out in order to exert power and control over his victim or her victim. Domestic violence victims are not necessarily only women, actually. Mm-hmm.
And so they're not only women. We know that men are also victims of domestic violence. And we want to tell you this is Raquel Abrahami. She is the executive director of the New York City Family Justice Center here in the Bronx. And it's a new center, very new. And for those people who don't know about it, let's walk people through it.
Thank you very much for inviting me. We're very excited to have opened a New York City Family Justice Center here in the Bronx. It opened in the middle of April. We're seeing already about 1,000 clients a month. So there was a big need in the Bronx. As you cited, there are a high percentage of domestic violence incidents that are reported to the police in New York City. The second highest number of them are reported in the Bronx. And we in the Bronx are the second smallest borough in terms of population. So it was really important that we brought this resource to the Bronx. The Family Justice Center is a place where domestic violence and, in fact, elder abuse victims as well, just to point that out for the viewers, can come. It's a safe, comfortable place where they can receive all the different services that they might need to have their needs addressed to become safe and to get back their autonomy and their stability. And again, also at the outset, I want to make sure that it's clear that everything is free. All the services are free, and folks can come without an appointment. We're open from 9 to 5 weekdays, and people are helped there without regard to immigration status, without regard to gender, without regard to sexual orientation.
And we say free. We also want to mention confidential,
and absolutely confidential. Although I should say that we share our space with the district attorney, the Domestic Violence Bureau, and with a couple of police officers. So we occupy a whole floor in the district attorney's building at 198 East 161st Street in the Bronx. And although everybody enters through the same reception area, one side is occupied by the district attorney's office, and we have a couple of police officers on site full-time. We also have a probation officer on site full-time. And then on the other side of the floor, we have all of our civil providers, caseworkers, counselors, lawyers who work in family court, immigration cases. Everybody on the what we call the criminal justice side, they have different confidentiality obligations. Obviously, if someone decides to go and make a report to the police or inquire of the police or talk to the DA about what's going on in their situation, and it rises to the level of a crime, then those professionals have to, by law, have to do whatever they're supposed to do. Exactly.
Absolutely. Let's walk through domestic violence a little bit more specifically, because we know that domestic violence, many people think of it as just being this physical
violence.
You come in, you've got some scrapes, bruises, physical attributes. But we understand domestic violence is a whole lot more than just physical abuse.
It sure is. There are a lot of different kinds of psychological abuse. As I mentioned earlier, it's about power and control. So psychological abuse can involve isolating the person from their family and friends, stalking the person, controlling all of their movements, dropping them off at school in the morning, insisting on picking them up in the evening, monitoring who they see throughout the day, obviously threats, menacing, everything from, I'm not going to let you have your favorite dress this weekend, to horrible kinds of threats like I'm going to kill you, I'm going to go after your kid, your best friend, your mom if you don't do what I say. There's also economic abuse.
Share with us about economic abuse, because some people really would never understand what economic abuse is, but it's really powerful.
It's very powerful. It involves every kind of control of a person's money, insisting that the person hand over any of their earnings for control by the abuser. It's if the person doesn't have an income, it's giving them money or not giving them money, withholding money for anything from basic necessities of life, diapers for the kids, food, all those kinds of power and control around money.
Mm-hmm. And those are things that you can do. And they also use children.
They absolutely, unfortunately, use children. A lot of criticism and abuse about how the person is raising their children. Threats to take the children away from the parent because they're a bad mom or dad, whatever it may be. In the context of folks who are undocumented immigrants, there's a lot around, I'm going to have you deported, and your children who are born here, you're never going to see them again. That's really powerful. Mm-hmm. Also turning the kids against the parent. Your mommy, your daddy isn't treating you right, they're not treating me right, they're a bad person.
Nobody sets out, I think, well, I don't want to say nobody sets out, but it's hard to imagine when, a relationship is first starting, things are very well. And then next thing you know, you go into this whole thing where violence becomes prevalent in the relationship. It becomes a domestic violence relationship. What starts out as love sometimes turns out in the area of domestic violence. What are signs that domestic violence, or when domestic violence is really becoming abusive, and signs that a relationship is becoming abusive?
Yes. First I should say that obviously that's one of the powerful things about domestic violence, is that the relationship did start out happy or exciting, and that's how it can be so much more insidious. Mm-hmm. And some of the signs, and again, these are signs, not indicators, that the relationship might tend to domestic violence, is if the person is very possessive, if they do a lot of blaming the victim for things that are in fact in the abuser's control, blaming them for getting mad because you didn't do what I wanted you to do, isolating the person so that they're not able to see their family, super jealous, somebody who's very, very jealous.
Right, we're seeing these signs right now, jealousy and controlling behavior, and relationships develops quickly.
Yeah, that might not be something that people would necessarily flag in their own minds, but it's when a relationship goes from from just a little flirtation to living together or spending every moment together, that can be a sign that the person that you're involved with is really going to try to take over control of everything in your life.
And then you have blaming others for problems. I think that's pretty big.
That is a big one. Most people take responsibility for what's going on in their life. If you're with somebody who tends to blame others, I was mad and I hit you last night because my boss was a jerk that day, or I'm on edge all the time because because I haven't been getting a lot of projects at my job. That's also a sign that this person might tend toward a domestic violence situation.
And sometimes when you think about the workplace and how a person can be affected in the workplace, just like, say, for instance, I have a bad day at work. I come home and I vent. That's okay on one day. But then when it becomes continually, I'm venting, and then you become the object of all of my frustration, that also paves the way to domestic violence.
Absolutely. If the person who is the victim ends up bearing the brunt of the frustration of what's going on at the job, and then starts getting into a situation where they're afraid of saying the wrong thing or afraid of looking at the person the wrong way because they've had a bad day, then that's starting to get into certainly bad relationship territory, if not danger of domestic violence. And again, is it a pattern? Does it go in cycles where there's a really down period where things seem really, really hopeless and awful, and then all of a sudden something will turn it around and there's a romantic period and lots of dates and flowers and lovey-dovey stuff?
I want to talk about the romantic part for a minute, because there's a part of domestic violence that has to deal with sex and playful use of force during sexual activity. That also can lead to domestic violence. Right.
Well, we didn't talk about another aspect of domestic violence. Of course, is sexual misbehavior or violence. Just because somebody's in a relationship or in a marriage doesn't mean that that sex can't be okay. It needs to be consensual, obviously. And when you're thinking about how a relationship is going, when you're thinking about what the risks are, if there's a playful use of force, say, during sex, then that could be a danger sign. If the victim isn't not yet a victim, we're talking about somebody who's in a situation, they don't like being thrown around playfully or forced to do something that they're not interested in doing in play, then that can be a sign that it could get worse.
I'm getting the stop sign here too, so I want to tell you, hold on 1 second. I'll be right back. Got to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to talk more about the issue of domestic violence, how you might be able to take notice of some of the warning signs, and how you could also help yourself and somebody who might be close to you. Stay with us. We're coming right back right after this. And back here on Perspectives, Darren Jaime here with you as you saw some of the signs of exactly what is domestic violence. Many times you think it's just the actual physical, but there's so much more than just the physical that takes place that a person actually has to know what exactly is domestic violence. And there you saw just a few of the things that occur when it comes to domestic violence. Raquel Abrahami, Executive Director of the New York City Family Justice Center here in the Bronx, is our guest in studio, and we've been talking about this. And I want to share a little bit about this, because once you get to the place where you're experiencing domestic violence, you're the victim. Many times it's hard for a victim to come forward because they go through a barrage of different emotions and issues. If you will, share with us what are some of the common reactions, because there might be a family member or somebody out there that's watching right now and saying, listen, I think my son, my daughter, my child might be involved in this kind of relationship, but I'm not sure about the signs. And so talk about the reactions.
So the reactions can be very varied, unfortunately, just as varied as the actual behaviors. There's a lot of shame, obviously, in what the person is going through. There can be a lot of guilt that somehow they have a feeling that they're not behaving correctly, they're not doing a good job at their relationship, so they feel like they somehow have brought it upon themselves. There's obviously denial that it's just a period. He's not really a bad guy. It's gonna stop once I finish school and start focusing on him. That kind of thing. Another common one is a feeling of isolation. There's nobody I can talk to. There's nobody who feels what I'm going through, who will understand what I'm going through in my family or in my circle of friends. And then there's depression. Just disengaging from the things that used to give the person joy and comfort and excitement in life.
Mm-hmm. And so when you have that, you have a person who's really, withdrawing. And they become in this withdrawing pattern. Sometimes this withdrawing pattern and domestic violence, it can be a physical thing, and it also leads to even brutal crimes like homicides.
That's right. In terms of the signs of or the risks that a domestic violence situation might escalate to a really serious injury or homicide, family members can look out for stuff like, is there a lot of stalking? Is there access to guns? That's a really big one in New York City, unfortunately. We have a lot of access to guns. Mm-hmm. Was there an incident of strangulation in the course of the physical violence? If there was any, was there strangulation? So those are some of the signs that the worst outcome might happen in the situation.
So when you have those types of situations, what advice do we give, right? What advice do we give somebody who's been through that path and they're saying, listen, I've been down this road and I've just heard this. What should they do?
Two basic things I always say. One is there are services out there. Do whatever you can to let the person know that there are places to go. That's why we opened the Family Justice Center. It's a walk-in center. It's a safe place. It's in the district attorney's building, so you can't get chased there. Mm-hmm. So there are services, not only in the Family Justice Center, there are lots of community-based organizations. The police will help people. And a lot of those services are also available at the Family Justice Center as a one-stop place. The other side of it, of course, is that the victim will only seek those services when they're ready. And sometimes it takes a really long time for them to become ready. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they feel ready to leave, to take a step, to make a report to the police, to confide in a family member, to try to leave, and then they'll go back. I heard a statistic recently that on average there are 5 reconciliations before a domestic violence victim actually is able to, is ready in his or her heart to get away.
So you mean 5 times this has to occur?
This is a statistic that I heard recently, that they'll reconcile with the person. Again, there's a cycle of violence or abuse, and then a honeymoon period that often happens. If there are children involved, the victim doesn't want, will because the violence has gotten so bad, they'll leave, but then they'll kind of get drawn back in somehow. And family members just have to remember there are services out there. You have to be patient, and you can't be judgmental, and you can't decide in your mind and push your loved one toward a particular resolution or solution. You need to just let them know that you care about them, you love them, you're available to help them when they're ready. And that you've got this phone number, address, location that they can go to when they're ready to do so.
I want to share a little bit about this, because you're very close in this, work closely in this regards to immigrant domestic violence. That's something that many people aren't even aware of. We talk about just general domestic violence, but immigrant domestic violence. Give a little light on this.
So for folks who are immigrants, whether or not they're documented, in fact, can often feel even more isolated when they're in a domestic violence situation. They might not speak English. Their contact with the community and the society in New York City is pretty much mediated by their abuser. The abuser will tell them, the police won't listen to you anyway. That couple, that family might have an experience back in their home country that causes them not to trust authority, not to trust the police or the justice system. So there's that whole kind of cultural isolation that might happen to somebody who's an immigrant. And then for folks who are undocumented, obviously it's a whole other layer of threats, menacing, emotional torture that, especially if there are children who are United States citizens or who are lawfully here, every single situation that involves an undocumented person, the abuser will use deportation as a threat against them. I'm going to report you to the authorities, and you're never going to see your children again. And it's very, very powerful.
Going to come back and take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll continue our discussion. And then we're also going to make sure to give you some help, to give you some tools, so that way you know where to go and where you can get the resources that you need if you know someone that might be suffering as a victim of domestic violence.
Did you know that 1 in every 4 women will experience domestic violence during her lifetime?
Did you know that most often the abuser is a member of the family?
Did you know that most victims of domestic violence never reach out for help?
Did you know?
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 If you or someone you know wants help, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE.
And there you saw the information for the New York City Family Justice Center in the Bronx, a very new facility that's dedicated to elder abuse, but not just elder abuse, but also really helping with domestic violence, which is the primary component. And we're glad to have with us actually Raquel Abrahami, who is the executive director at that center. And as we were sharing, we saw a little bit before about the Brides of Christ, and we remember the story of Gladys Ricard and the Brides March. And is domestic violence getting the awareness now that you think that that has been so long swept under the rug?
We hope so. We have a lot of outreach efforts and a lot of awareness efforts. We launched a public awareness campaign, and we've got over, I think, 2,800 locations throughout New York City where the public goes, drugstores, the C-towns, payomatics. We even had posters indicating, giving people guidance about what a healthy relationship should be or looks like. We had our posters posted in all those places that I mentioned, also on the Delicioso Coco carts that I saw all throughout the Bronx over the summer. And we're really, we work with many providers at the Family Justice Center, lots of organizations that work to help domestic violence victims. We all do outreach efforts all the time in schools, in the community board meetings, in the city council members, district meetings, and we really hope that we're getting the message out there. And it seems like we are, because we have lots of clients coming in.
And once again, you see about 1,000 people a month
About
come through the
1,000
door.
people a month come through the door. Yes.
And so, and here's the thing: for those 1,000 people to come through the door, there's still many more that want to come through the door. We want to give you the information that you might be able to have, so that way you can come through the door, letting you know. Hey, Raquel, would you just share with them who can come through your door?
So it's open to anyone who is a victim of intimate partner violence, so domestic violence between intimate partners, and elder abuse victims, and people who live in the Bronx, reside in the Bronx, or where the abuse happened in the Bronx. And we help anyone without regard to gender, sexual orientation, immigration status, ability to pay. There's no cost involved. Obviously, ethnicity. Anybody can come through our doors and get help.
And once again, those services are free and confidential for the most part, and we want you to take advantage of it. If you know somebody that's being involved in domestic violence, we encourage you to get them help. If you're engaged in domestic violence, we want you to get help as well, because there is also help for abusers.
There is help for abusers. We actually don't have any help for abusers on site, because it's not safe to have the same doors open. But folks can call 311 and get great referrals. And there's also a phone number, 1-800-LIFENET, that also will give out information about batterers intervention programs and the like.
All right, Raquel Abrahami, Executive Director of the New York City Family Justice Center in the Bronx, our guest. And thank you so much for coming and sharing with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, glad to have you. And we encourage you to find out, if you want more information, we encourage you to find out more. All you've got to do is go to the Family Justice Center in the Bronx, walk through the doors, and you can also be able to find close up exactly what is going on there and the services that are actually being provided. 198 East 161st Street, second floor, Bronx, New York, 10451. Number is 718-508-1222. Remember, no appointment is necessary. All you got to do is just walk in from 9 to 5 on the weekdays, and you'll be able to receive the services that you need. And that about wraps it up for us here on Perspectives. I'm Darren Jaime. We thank you for watching, and remember, share your perspective with somebody else, because it just might make a difference in their life. For our producer, Curlew Burton, and the rest of his staff, and the rest of our staff here at Perspectives, we want to thank you for watching. Be safe. Until the next time we meet, take care.